Welcome to another episode of My Crazy, My Rules. And I am going to begin this episode differently than I ever have before. As I say in all of my videos and audios and all of my things that I paste on Facebook and everywhere else, I believe that every story deserves a voice, but I also believe that that voice should be truthful and not full of rumor. And before we even get into this podcast, I'm going to begin with a warning. This episode discusses a very recent mass shooting, including hate speech on weapons and excerpts from a farewell letter. Some listeners may find this very disturbing. So if you do find it disturbing, if just the thought of what I am going to be reading possibly will put a trigger to you, I ask that you not listen to this podcast or go ahead if somebody else is listening to it and step into a different room. The other thing about today is I am not going to go off a script, or I'm not going to be reading an actual letter. And my intent is to do this entire broadcast through just once. You may hear mistakes. You may hear me get emotional. It was a very emotional tragedy that just happened, but I want to separate the facts from the rumors. And that's what I intend to do today. Life is love. Life is pain. I'm tired of the pain this world gives out. These are the shooter's very own words, taken from his farewell letter before he opened fire on a Catholic church in Minneapolis. But here's the thing I want to really put out there. Social media and even some, quote, news agencies have twisted this story into something it's not. The facts of this story are completely different than what you may have been listening to on your encyclopedias of Facebook, Instagram, X, things of that nature. So today on My Crazy, My Rules, I want to go ahead and separate the facts from the rumor. Today, we're going to cut through the noise around the Annunciation Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis. I'm going to put out the facts, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how the online rumor machine works and why the truth here, it really matters. On Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, during a school mass at Annunciation Catholic Church and School in Minneapolis, 23-year-old Robin Westman opened fire from outside the church windows. 2 children were killed and 18 others injured. Westman died by suicide at the scene. Police say 116 rifle rounds were fired into the sanctuary. The FBI is investigating the attack as domestic terrorism and an anti-Catholic hate crime. The victims have been publicly named. They are the 2 that were killed at the scene were Fletcher Merkel, who was 8 years old, and Harper Moisky, who was 10. And anyone with children, anyone with a heart can only imagine how the families feel when they got that notice. And the authorities have talked about, and multiple outlets have confirmed, that Westman, who was the shooter, Robin Westman, did post YouTube videos timed to this attack. He showed his weapons, he showed his writings, and he had a farewell note to his family. And very quickly, the FBI, thank goodness, had these removed, because again, that just leaves it open for other people to copy what he did, or to read more into it, or to change it. And I will say, when I go through this episode, I am going to be saying a lot of facts, and anyone that needs to can write me. And you can do it at info. It's a little bit different. Info at mycrazymyrules.com. And I'll be glad to give you where all these facts came from. Most people, you can just find them on the internet yourself. I'm sorry. I have spent an enormous amount of time in the last few days gathering as many facts as I could. I am not going to even talk about the rumors here because if I talk about them, somebody will pull that out of context and use it as a fact. So I am, during this episode, just sticking as much as possible just to the facts that I have been able to accumulate through this, because almost immediately the internet made this about a transgendered person, and nothing has come up. I mean, yes, he or she changed her name. There has been just rumors that this person was transgendered. There has been no facts. There has been nothing that has actually come out other than there was a change of name. And that could be enough to go on. If that's all you want, go right ahead. But the facts of this, where investigators have gone, this person, Robin, he was infatuated with mass killings, mass shootings. He had this hatred-driven ideology and an obsession with past mass killers. There's nothing that links this to being gender. It links it to um, just his obsession with what has gone on in the past, and more or less, in my words, his hatred. The online framing is more of like a culture war, and it's not the case file. And not getting political, but it's amazing how many politicians will try to change this to be about what they believe or about what they want you to believe. And it's nothing like that. And one of the things is his weapons and his magazines or clips, whatever you want to call them. Everything had something written on it. Some things had 2, 3, 4 items. He, in his video, if indeed this video was actual, nothing I have seen says, I mean, it's him. When you look at it, everything seems factual and actual. But in this day and age, especially with AI, I don't take anything as a fact unless it is posted by someone who had the access and said, yes, this is absolutely factual. So I am going to state it as I believe it was a fact, but take that with a grain of salt. I'm not a news agency, which probably is a good thing. But on the weapons, on the clips, and there was many, many laid out in this video, if you watched it, he not only showed everything he had, he picked them up, or she picked them up and showed them to the camera one at a time, turning everything so you could see absolutely everything that was written on the weapons and ammunition he was going to use. Some had the same thing written more than once. One of them was "Kill Donald Trump." You saw in it, and this was scrawled on some of the magazines. 6 million wasn't enough. And of course, this will be a Holocaust denial or anti-Semitic slogan that he had on different ones. He had that 6 million wasn't enough. He had burn Israel. Israel must fall, destroy Hias. All of this leads to his mentality. None of this leads to something sexual or something based on what the media or what Facebook and the couch type news people want you to believe. Even on some of the weapons, he had names of mass shooters and mass killers. Robert Bowers, Natalie Rupnow, Adam Lanza, James Holmes, Pekka Eric Avinen, if I pronounce that right, Anders Beyring, Mark Lapine, Charles Whitman, Peyton Gendron, Brenton Tarrant. This one is going to be a little bit tough for me. Vladislav Roslikov were all written on weapons. He is showing you that he just puts these people up on a pedestal. Rupnow specifically appears on one of the guns in the pre-attack video. And anybody that's familiar with that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, will know exactly where that came from. And the other thing was everything was written with a white marker. And the white marker, it imitates the aesthetics used by the New Zealand mosque attacker, Brenton Tarrant. And this is a known tactic among copycats. So you can see he's pulling all the stuff of the people that he idolized to go into why he was doing this. He wrote a farewell letter, and I'm sure if you have looked into this at all, you have seen it written down. I believe it's 3 or 4 pages written on lined paper. Again, nothing has come out as that was fact. That's pictures, and very probably it is. But because it's not written down as fact, and because I really, even if I didn't have the authority to read the whole thing, I wouldn't be able to. I'm just going to kind of use a paraphrase and hint at what he said in there. Okay. And it was, as I read my notes here, it was a 4-page letter, but let me get into a little bit about what he said. And just if you look at the essence of the letter, if you look at what he was saying, he apologizes to his family. He's in despair. He has set out he has justified a self-justification, and it goes right along with his violent ideations. He gives a reason, but nowhere in this does he come out and say, oh, it's because I was belittled or I was beat up because of my sexual. It never comes out in there. It comes out different, and it starts to family and friends. He comes out and he's apologizing. And he tells his parents, you didn't fail me. I was raised kind. And he talks about the world corrupted him. He tells his siblings, he tainted their lives. He tells them that because of what I did, you will be ostracized. People are gonna hate you for being my siblings. And I will understand if you feel it's necessary to change your names, to hide that you were even related to me. He understands that. So he tells him, it's okay. Go ahead and do that. He describes chronic depression, suicidal thoughts, and a life he believes is unendurable. He frames the coming violence. It's a personal final act. And at the same time he does that, he asks his loved ones to move on and to remember the victims, which is really tough. And one of the things in his letters he also talks about, and one of the things in his video that he talked about, is that he took the time to, one, sketch out everything about the church, about where they would be praying. He took the time to actually go to the church a week or two before to check and see how the doors were, to see if people would be able to run out certain doors, anything like that. So this was seriously premeditated. It was not just a spur of the moment thing. He had been planning this for weeks, if not months ahead of time. So it's not something that, wow, he one day thought, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to take my guns. And one of the things about his guns is when you look at the videos where he's showing all the different guns he has. He shows his shotgun that had writing on it. He shows his AK type weapon, and I don't remember which one it was. It wasn't an AK, but that had writing all over it. He shows a semi-automatic pistol that had writing all over it. And those 3 weapons were meant to kill. He did have a 4th weapon that nobody has even brought up, and I don't know if it was used for the intended purpose, but he had a 5-round, just a gun, just a regular old spin the chamber type of gun. And he pointed out in the video, this one is for me. If everything else fails, this is the one I'm going to take my own life with. And I don't know if he did that or not, but that is what he talked about in his video. He actually had already planned everything out. He had hundreds of rounds of ammunition with him when they found him. But back to the letter a little bit. He also talks about one of his quotes, and again, I can't tell you this as verbatim. He says, "Please know I care for all of you. It pains me to bring the storm of chaos into your life. Life is love. Life is pain. I'm tired of the pain this world gives out." So that kind of tells you where his frame of mind was and why he did this. But I want to get into also who did he idolize? I read a bunch of the shooters and everything from before. He had a deranged fixation on the previous mass killings. He showed a reverence for notorious shooters, especially Adam Lanza. And if you know that name, he's from Sandy Hook. And again, he just put all the other people on his weapons, and he referenced very specifically Ruby Ridge, which took place in 1992, and Waco, which took place in 1993. And both of these mass shootings, or even both of these were kind of government against the people. So both of these have become mythologized in the circles as symbols of government tyranny. Okay. Vicky Weaver, whose name he had put on one of the weapons, she was the husband to the man at Ruby Ridge, Randy Weaver, I believe his name was. And the FBI sharpshooter had actually tried to take Randy out. And one of the bullets that was meant for Randy, I believe, winged Randy and killed Vicky, which was his wife. And that's what Robin goes towards. And I apologize, you'll hear me go he, she. It's difficult for me because I'm reading both names and how they transition. But every time I am talking about Robin, this is what he believes is things that he should be making amends for. So that was Ruby Ridge. Then he also talks about Waco, the Branch Davidians. That was actually a siege that lasted over 50 days. And in that, at the culmination of it, there was 76 of the Branch Davidians that were killed in that fire and everything that happened afterwards. So these are what is used to recruit people to go against the government. And they use two things like this to show how bad the government and how horrible they can actually be. And something else that he had written on one of the weapons, and I really had to look into this one because I didn't understand what it meant. It was Baruch Kazad. And that is actually a Tolkien from the book Dwarvish War Cry. And it meant in the whole thing, it was the axes of the dwarves is what that actually meant. And there was a whole phrase that was used with it. But again, I can't tell you that was actually 100% true. But some of the other things he did on there, the Anti-Defamation League came out and said a lot of these were aimed at them. It was very neo-Nazi, anti-Semitic messages, and it didn't appear only on the guns and the magazines, but he had one smoke grenade that he showed in his video, and on that smoke grenade, it said two things. Well, it said four things, but two things right off the bat that were anti-Semitic was 6 million wasn't enough, and it also said Jew gas. Um, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of direct quotations because there is a lot of this type of wording and everything else. And when the police department did retrieve the weapons out of his car or his van, and they also found the one smoke bomb, and it did have that thing written on it. And they believe he was going to try to use that for his escape. So that shows that he was intent on carrying this out, being able to leave, and maybe, who knows, carry out another one if he got away with this one. Something else that was written on the weapons was Rupp now. Or Roop now. I don't know exactly how that's pronounced, but this is a reference to Natalie Rupnow. She went by the name Samantha. She was the 15-year-old who shot students at the Wisconsin Christian School in Madison, and that was fairly recent. That was late to 2024. So he was bringing her up. He was using what she did, and he was copycatting that. So I said in the beginning, we were going to talk about the difference between the facts and the rumors. The facts say this was a planned attack. He had multiple hundreds of rounds. He murdered children. He had hateful slogans on his weapons and on his ammunition and on the smoke bomb. He left a farewell letter steeped in despair and violent ideations. He had a scrapbook of mass killer names treated as heroes. That's the story. That's it in a nutshell. Everything else you've been hearing on social media, especially about the sexuality or the gender, go ahead and make yourself a rumor bucket and throw that in there, because that's all that it is. There's no evidence whatsoever linking the sexual orientation she or he had, or he or she had, or gender identity to this hateful, murderous crime. Everything the investigators are focusing on is hate and copycat ideology. So it's where I'm going now. We saw the facts, we saw the rumors. Let's talk about the biggest fact that I believe is here, and that's this person's mental health. You know, whatever you believe the reason is, and even if you go with the rumors about, hey, it's because this person couldn't be, I don't know, taken at his word or her word for being trans, or if you read in some of the what's called truths, is that they had just broken up with a significant other. No matter what you believe, it comes down to, in my opinion, the mental health. This person had a violent ideation, had isolation. This person obsessed with the study of past attacks, and that's a very real risk pattern. They had even talked about in some of the things that I've read about what was in the video. The video again and the letter again was taken down very, very quickly. So take anything you now read or see on the internet with a grain of salt as to whether it's actual copy or not. But one of the things is they talk about that they were psychologically messed up and they never went for the help that they needed, which is incredible that they even talk about that they know that. And the other thing is, in all the other ones, in things that happen today, mental health becomes the top reasoning, but it seems to be our lowest priority. When we go to place blame, when we sit back and Monday morning quarterback everything that happened, we come up with everything, Oh, the parents didn't take care of this child right. The parents should have never bought them weapons, which I agree. Um, this person was bullied in school. This person was trans, or they were gay, or whatever it is, which I love how people fall back on that right away. Um, and the absolute bottom line is the person had a mental health problem that was never taken care of. And we bypass that every single time. When we look at what do we have in our area to help someone that's going through a mental health crisis, there's very little. There's not a lot of places to go that can take care of you if you don't have a lot of money. When you talk about an inpatient type of atmosphere, it seems to be, and I know this from personal experience, what type of insurance do you have? How much money do you have? How do you intend on paying for this? And it's not, okay, let's get this person in and get them taken care of, and we're going to go from there. We put them on a 72-hour psych hold. And I even talked about this in the first podcast with my mom, who was a senior citizen, and it was very difficult to get her into a hospital on a psych hold. So I think our bottom line, or the bottom of the pyramid that we have to start with, the foundation is, how are we going to help people that have a mental illness that need help? In this case, the person talked about that in the past they had been suspended from school for making violent or talking about school shootings. This person said their actual mom should have been aware, and their stepmother had even told them that they have a dark aura around them. But again, nothing was done. And matter of fact, the weapons were still there. So they didn't even think to take it away. And we have had our people do try to set boundaries for weapons, and there is such a fierce debate about it. Nothing ever gets done. Now, I'm not telling you that any of the things that have come up should be done. You have the red flag laws, things of that nature, and everybody's like, oh my God, we got to do that right away. Or we have hey, you can't get a weapon without having proper ID and having a background check. But when it comes down to it, we find that most of these weapons aren't even purchased legally or correctly. Maybe a parent got it for a child, or in this case, the AK style weapon that was used was purchased from a friend. So it wasn't even went through the system. But the other weapons that were purchased were all purchased legally, because nobody said in the beginning, hey, my son shouldn't have a weapon because he's not mentally able right now. So this, to me, is the bottom foundation. We talked about his violent ideation, his isolation, his obsession. So that's how we have to interpret this tragedy. And before it happens again, and here's one of the biggest things that I think, and a lot of people are going to say, wait, Ben, you're talking about walking over somebody's rights, and people have the right to bear arms. And absolutely, I carry a weapon with me everywhere I go, that I can legally carry the weapon. I purchased my weapon legally. I had my background check done. I carry it everywhere. And I'll be honest with you, my wife, my children appreciate it. My children carry weapons because we understand that ultimately that could be the ultimate defense for us. But it's tough. It's difficult. At what point do you say somebody doesn't carry a weapon? But we have to look at how we got the weapons. And if somebody has a weapon, when should be the time that we say, wait, we need to hold this person's weapon from them? And people will look at, and I believe it was in Maryland that it happened originally, where the police went under a red flag law and were going to take a person's weapon, and a shootout occurred. And people go, see, that's why you shouldn't be doing it. But what I say is, see, anybody that grabs a gun and shoots at police, do they really or should they really have a weapon? Somebody that goes and says, I'm going to kill myself with their weapon is mentally not there at the time. And I can tell you for a fact, I understand intimately how a person can get to that point, how they can feel so overwhelmed that they want to kill themselves. And that person does have a mental illness at that time, as well as a person that feels that they must go out and shoot somebody else has to be stopped no matter what it takes. We should not be losing children to somebody with a mental illness. And I will go and I always end with this. And here's where you may, and one of the things I've been posting is you can save a life by telling your story. And in this, what I mean is, if you have a story where you helped somebody or you stopped somebody, and there was a way that you did it, when you share that story, you not only teach people or show people that it's okay to have done that, hey, I did this, but you also tell them how you did it. When you watch a video on Facebook or you're watching true crimes or you're watching the police or whatever. And just recently I saw one where the person wanted to jump off a bridge and the police officer immediately responded and just ran up and grabbed the person. That's how they stopped it. And you have that ability by showing what you did. And one of the other things you need to realize is that you're not hurting the person by getting them help. And a lot of people will believe, well, if I call 911 or I ask to talk to a police officer and these people were fine, they're going to hate me. And that to me is far better than that reasoning you don't call and then you find out they killed themselves or they killed somebody else or a lot of somebody else's. And I've done that in my own family. I'm going to be honest with you. One of my siblings, I felt was overwhelmed while they were in college. And the way that person was talking to me, I felt scared for them. I did worry about how they were going to take it, but I did have a welfare check done on my sibling. And it turned out to be that my sibling was very distraught, but not so distraught that they needed immediate help. They did get help later on. They were overwhelmed. But at the time that the welfare check was done, they were actually with friends discussing everything that was going on. And my sibling called me and said, "What the heck did you just do?" And I said, "I love you. I was worried about you and I'm not close to you. And I just wanted somebody to check on you." And my sibling came back and said, "I love you too." And that was it. But that was far better of my sibling being angry and upset with me and maybe even never speaking to me again than it would have been for me to have sat back and watched something happen to my sibling that I could have stopped. So with that, remember, even if you're calling for somebody else, you can still call 988 and talk to somebody immediately about what's going on. And if you feel it's that detrimental, you can call 911 and explain to the call taker exactly what's going on and let them or let the police officers go there and make the final decision. Don't try to, because this could be your way or what you can do to interrupt, to prevent the next tragedy from happening. So, this is My Crazy, My Rules. I truly believe every story deserves to be heard, but it deserves to be told honestly. If you've lived through something heavy, or you've seen warning signs and stepped in, please write me. Letters at mycrazymyrules.com. And your story might help someone find a way back.